Hi guys, this is Mrs. Craig here, and we are going to just go over some ACT practice and just help you guys get used to seeing the material even more. Obviously, more practice will help you guys get better. So let's dive right in. So the first thing that I want to go over is just some general tips and tricks for test taking. The main thing about taking tests is that you understand the format of the test and you understand what they're going to be asking of you and what the test generally looks like. So let's just go over some things just to help you in general. So my first bullet point says do not read the entire page first. So we all know that there, especially in the science portion, there are a lot of words, more words than you would expect for science, right? You think to yourself, it's not reading, but it does involve a lot of reading. And so what they'll give you is a lot of background information. And so while this can be helpful, it's also very, very intimidating for people who have not, gotten their master's in science. So, do not read the entire page first. You are going to, and this brings me to my second bullet point, you're going to look at the images and you're going to try to interpret the images first. There are some passages that do not have images on the science portion, so obviously I'm not talking about those, but for the ones that do have images, you are going to look at those first. And then that brings me to my third bullet point. When the question refers to an image or a passage, you're going to go straight to that passage or that image. Okay. So for instance, it will say in figure one, and then you know that you're looking at figure one, not figure two, not table one, not table two, and so on and so forth. So you refer exactly to what the question asks you to refer to. And my last one is just mark up the text. Okay. You guys are going to see me use my highlighter and see me use my pen today. And I'm just going to mark up the text a little bit, just show you some things that you can immediately notice and it brings your attention to it instead of focusing on everything else. Okay. So, all right. This is an example of a science portion where they give you tables and graphs and passages, right? So there's a lot of information here. And the first thing you may want to do is just start reading. Don't do that, okay? So we're going to look at these figures and just maybe see if we can interpret what's going on, right? We're always going to look at our keys here. So we have two keys here for this. We have a table one, and then instead of it saying a key, it's going to tell you right here in this explanation what figure one is showing, okay? And then beyond that, that's it. You don't need to look at anything else as of right now, okay? So this entire page is what's going to be used for this next question, okay? So I want you to take a second and I want you to tell me what's the first thing you need to do when you see this question. Okay, so hopefully you said, let's try to interpret these images because we now have to pick an image instead of words for our answer, right? And then we also have a table here, okay? So this obviously is going to be what we're going to use for our answer. And so we don't need to, bother ourselves with the other graphs that are on that other page, right? We just need to focus on this table maybe, or maybe even, some words here. And I'll show you that in a minute. So the question says, the width of a ZOI is best depicted by which of the following figures? So 9 times out of 10, you have not worked in a lab. You have no idea what a ZOI is. So that is going to imply that you need to do a little bit of reading. So first, let's just go ahead. Let's highlight this ZOI, right? Because we want to know what that is. It's asking for it, so we want to know what it is. So now we come over here, and here it is again. And if we read just a little bit ahead of that, it says zone of inhibition. So that gives us the answer of what that is. And now we're going to read what it is so that we can pick the correct answer. So it says the space between the edges of fungal growth and of bacterial growth. So take another second and try to answer the question, okay? All right, so let's go through. So we are looking at the space between the edges of fungal growth and of bacterial growth. So we're looking at this one, not sure, maybe still not sure, but then here, this space right here, this marker, this I here, it shows that space. And it's the only one that is only showing that space. So we're going to go ahead and pick G for our answer. And hopefully you picked G as well. All right, we're going to move on. All right, so now we notice a lot, right? We see this funky looking thing right here. There's a lot of words that are showing the body parts, and then we also have these graphs down here. Okay, this is all figure one. So again, hopefully you went right to the question after assessing that okay, we see some things, but maybe we aren't able to figure out what's going on here. So immediately you see it says based on figure one. So I will tell you on this page, there were two figures, okay? So you're not going to worry yourself with that other figure. You're going to go straight to figure one, which is what I have right here, okay? So let's go ahead and read the question. It says, based on figure one, on average, was the fur pigmentation on the ventrum of this animal right here, which we know is a deer mice, and this is the correct terminology for it, lighter or darker 150 kilometers inland than it was at the coastal site, right? So maybe all those words are just, it's a lot for you, right? So first of all, don't worry about that. We don't need to know what it is. We see that we're talking about fur pigmentation. And then if we read closely, we can actually see here, and I'm going to mark this up, we can actually see that it's specifically asking us to look for the pigmentation on the ventrum, right? So where do we see that word again? Well, we see it right here, okay? So we're only looking at this graph. You don't need to worry yourself with any of these other graphs because it's not asking about those parts of the body. It's asking about the ventrum. So now we're going to see which one of these answers goes along with that, okay? So go ahead and try to answer it before I go through it. All right, so on this one, hopefully you picked J. And the reason why J is the answer is obviously we come here, we're not going to say that it's lighter, right? Because we can see that it had zero brightness, right? And so obviously if there's no brightness, that implies that there's darkness, right? So we automatically cross off F and we cross off G, okay? So now we're left with darker and darker. And this one says darker because the average relative brightness was greater. Well, no, because you don't have more brightness and darkness, right? And so J is what we're left with because the average relative brightness was less, okay? So let's go on to the last one. All right, so on this one, again, we have a figure here, right? And this one's interesting because we have three things to look at instead of our usual two. So we have our x-axis, we have our y-axis, and then we have, again, on the other side, we have the gape angle, right? So we have our speed, time, and gape angle. And we're going to be looking at all of this together, but again, that's all you need to do. You don't need to read any of this. This isn't important right now. You're going to go straight to your image, and then you're going to read your question and see what they're trying to ask of you. So it says, over which of the following time periods of the lunge feeding event did the gape angle both increase and decrease? Okay. So first of all, we are only going to be looking at the gape angle. So if you go here, we have two lines. One of them is solid, one of them is dotted, but our gape angle is what we need to be focusing on because that's the one, and I just covered it. That's okay. We know that our gape angle is the dotted line. So we're looking for increase and decrease. And so if we just go through, we're going to cross off 0 to 6. We don't even have a gape angle there. And then 8 to 12, well, there's no gape angle until you get to 12. So we only see an increase happening there. Doesn't work for us. 12 to 14, on the other hand, we actually do. We have an increase, and then we have a little decrease over here. So right now that's looking pretty good. Let's check for 14 and 18 just to make sure that it's not a better answer. 14, 18, only seeing a decrease. So we are going to choose D. All right, that is the end, and I hope everything here was helpful for you guys. Good luck on your next test, which won't be for a while, but always be studying and trying to learn, more study habits that will help you when you're just testing in general.